Jordan Peterson claims the Ontario College of Psychologists wants to put him in a social media training course, or else he could lose his license. Is it really re-education? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Jordan Peterson, the Canadian clinical psychologist, is no stranger to public controversy. In fact, almost everything he does is controversial. Maybe you've heard of him as the incel-loving, woman-hating custodian of the patriarchy. But he's also caused controversy by eating an all-meat diet, comparing people to lobsters all the time, and telling people to clean their rooms. And if you think that telling people to clean their rooms shouldn't be that controversial, clearly you missed the Marie Kondo backlash of 2019. She's not saying you have to get rid of everything you own, people, only things that don't spark joy. You can keep all your books. But the point is, the only public figure more controversial than Marie Kondo is Jordan Peterson. He doesn't shy away from hot-button issues like identity politics, transgenderism, and worst of all, telling people to stand up straight with their shoulders back. Jordan Peterson is clearly a posturist. And as with everything in this world, how people feel about Peterson is often split along ideological lines. Many on the right love him, while many on the left hate him. The question is, should Peterson's political views cause him to lose his professional license as a clinical psychologist? That's the latest Jordan Peterson controversy. Last week, Peterson tweeted that the Ontario College of Psychologists had demanded that he submit to mandatory social media communication retraining with their experts. Peterson initially said it was because he had retweeted the leader of Canada's Conservative Party and also criticized Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, which makes it sound pretty political. The Ontario College of Psychologists basically licenses and regulates professional psychologists in Ontario province. You can't work as a psychologist without that license, which means if Peterson doesn't do the training, he will face an in-person tribunal and possible suspension of his license. Peterson has already said he will not comply with what he calls his re-education. So what kind of social media training are we talking about? The college would require Peterson to work with a coach to review, reflect on, and improve his professionalism in public statements within 6 months, which may be shortened or extended if the coach thinks it's necessary. What's crazy is that Peterson would be forced to pay a coach up to $225 an hour or some other ridiculously overpriced rate. And if the coach doesn't think he's made progress, he might lose his license anyway. So why is Peterson being forced to attend what sounds like overpriced social media therapy sessions? I'll get into that after the break. Welcome back. Jordan Peterson says he must go through social media re-education or lose his license as a clinical psychologist. Now, Peterson hasn't actually worked with patients in a few years. He says his increasing notoriety made it too hard to maintain a clinical practice. So this doesn't directly threaten his livelihood. But the issue is bigger than just Peterson. I'll go into that a little later in the episode. But first, what did Jordan Peterson say that was so bad he could lose his license? Peterson posted online the list of complaints against him, as well as a document from the Ontario College of Psychologists that explained their decision. They think Peterson's actions are a moderate risk to the public. Why? Let's take a look at some of the complaints. One complaint was about this tweet, where Jordan Peterson told someone who was worried about overpopulation that he's free to leave at any point, which the complaint said was making light of suicide. Several complaints were about this tweet he made about plus-sized model Yumi Nu, which one complaint said was dangerous for people with eating disorders. That seems like a stretch, although this tweet was so cringy that it immediately became a meme. Several more complaints were about this tweet on Elliot/Ellen Page's transgender surgery. That one actually got him suspended from Twitter, too. But possibly even more controversial were Peterson's tweets about COVID mandates and Canadian politicians. His exchange with Justin Trudeau's former top aide, Gerald Butts, prompted someone to complain about him being unprofessional, threatening, and harassing. I'm also incredibly offended by this tweet because not only did he spell prick wrong, but he also used the wrong your. Plus, the guy's name is Gerald Butts, and Peterson couldn't think of a better insult than that? Lame. Other complaints were filed against Peterson for calling Trudeau a puppet, and for retweeting Canada's Conservative Party leader and saying enough with COVID mandates. These aren't all the complaints, but it's pretty representative. Peterson's tweets are opinionated and often rude, and he comes across as kind of a jerk, like pretty much 99.95% of people on Twitter. But are his tweets really a professional violation? The Ontario College of Psychologists was also concerned about Peterson's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast last January. There were a couple of complaints about this, including from someone who said they were concerned about Peterson's mental health status, and then went through and time-stamped every single thing they didn't like about what Peterson said in just the first 60 minutes. Including things like Peterson saying that international free trade came at the expense of the American working class, and that drunk monkeys were comical and like a frat house. This is basically the guy who writes a 10-page YouTube comment all in one giant block with no punctuation. Definitely someone the Ontario College of Psychologists should take seriously. Which they did, because they specifically cited one of the complaints this person made as being a concern. At one point in the podcast, Joe Rogan reads a statistic about how many children are suffering from air pollution, and Peterson says it's just poor children and the world has too many people on it anyways, which the college said was a demeaning joke. I'm sorry, is this the Ontario College of Professional Comedians? No. That joke was clearly not making fun of poor kids, it's making fun of people who don't care about poor kids. Joe Rogan even says you're being facetious, and Peterson says, yeah, definitely. So these are the types of complaints that are now threatening Peterson's professional qualifications. In an op-ed to the National Post, Peterson points out that every single accusation isn't related to his clinical practice, but is explicitly political, and specifically about how his opinions aren't leftist enough. I don't have to tell you how the left and right are reacting to this. You've probably got the gist already. People on the left are saying that social media training isn't a big deal and he really should be facing worse punishment. And people on the right are worried about people being persecuted for saying unpopular things and are using words like Maoist and Orwellian. Now here's the thing. The Ontario College of Psychologists don't have to take all complaints against Jordan Peterson seriously. They can toss them out for being frivolous. And Peterson even said that half the people filing complaints falsely said they were his clients when they were not. But the college took them seriously anyway. In his rebuttal to the college, Peterson said that many of the complaints were about tweets or opinions that had nothing to do with the practice of psychology and should be protected under free speech rules. He also said he was already working on fixing his social media problems by trying to come off as less of a jerk. I'm paraphrasing there. But that wasn't enough for the college. Among other things, they argue that Peterson still poses moderate risks of harm to the public by making statements inconsistent with the professional standards, policies, and ethics currently adopted by the college. And those harms include undermining public trust in psychologists. Well, don't worry, Ontario College of Psychologists, because no one hears Jordan Peterson and thinks, ah yes, the psychologist. They think, ah yes, that incel-loving, woman-hating meat-eater who's always trying to get me to clean my room. Peterson is now basically trying to take the Ontario College of Psychologists to court, arguing that the college has overreached from psychology practice into policing speech. And here's where it gets bigger than Jordan Peterson. It doesn't matter how you feel about him. If a professional organization can make it impossible for people to get work if they have opinions that don't agree with that organization, that's not just a slippery slope. It's a slip and slide down Mount Everest. Because everything in society is getting politicized nowadays. We're already seeing this happen in other professions too. And it's an even bigger problem when governments get involved. Last September, we did a story about how California was passing a bill to make it illegal for doctors to spread COVID misinformation, basically weaponizing the state's medical board, which licenses and regulates doctors. But as we covered over and over again, misinformation is hard to define, especially when the medical consensus on COVID has changed over time. This isn't too far off from what's happening to Jordan Peterson now. He's the canary in the coal mine. If the Ontario College of Psychologists does manage to strip him of his license, that will only embolden them and other organizations to do the same to less public figures too. Peterson himself will be just fine. He'll just keep releasing multiple hour-long discussions on his YouTube channel like this one. I can't even hear what he's saying over his suit. Are those polka-dotted sneakers? Hold on, is that Elon Musk's face on his tie? You know what, never mind. Jordan Peterson clearly needs re-education. Send him to the gulag. So what do you think about Jordan Peterson's social media re-education? Leave your comments below. And if you like this show, remember that we rely mainly on direct support from viewers like you. All it takes is as little as $1 per episode over on our crowdfunding website, Patreon. Visit patreon.com/America Uncovered for more. Click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.